The land where Atlas made his stand was a tapestry of desolate beauty and brutal indifference. Stretching for miles, the forgotten backwoods offered no comfort, only the relentless, cold logic of survival. This narrative is not a fictional tale, but the true account of a spirit forged in the fire of absolute abandonment, the saga of Atlas. His name, given later, suits him, evoking the burden of a world he carried alone. For more than 100 days, Atlas existed in this void. 100 days is a measure of time that, for a domestic animal, is equivalent to an eternity. A gradual erosion of trust, health, and hope. It is a slow, agonizing descent into a purely primal existence. Our journey began with a faint signal, a series of calls, and blurry, second-hand accounts of a dog seen near a remote, heavily overgrown logging trail. The consistent detail was the number, 100 days. No one could get close. Everyone who tried only drove him further into the brush. When the HopeRescueStories team finally reached the area, the atmosphere was immediately distinct. The air felt heavy, not with mist, but with the palpable presence of protracted suffering. We established a small, silent observation post. Deploying high-powered binoculars and remote thermal cameras, what these devices revealed was profoundly heartbreaking. Atlas was barely recognizable as a dog. He was a creature of sharp angles and hollowed flanks, a fur-covered skeleton moving with a constant, twitchy vigilance. His once beautiful coat was a filthy, matted shield, laced with burrs and soaked with days of moisture. The visual evidence was devastating, but the deeper insight came from studying his behavior. Atlas was not merely shy or scared, he was a master of evasion, a paranoid strategist. He drank only from the deepest, most shadowed creeks. He moved only during the hours of twilight and dawn, utilizing the fading light as camouflage. He ate what little he could scavenge, perhaps a den, rodent, perhaps some forgotten berries, never lingering, always on the move. He had survived because he had surrendered his humanity, replacing trust with instinct to the team. This confirmed the gravity of the mission. We were not rescuing a lost pet. We were rehabilitating a wild animal back into the world of compassion. The first 24 hours were dedicated solely to reconnaissance, mapping his movements, and, crucially, learning the rhythm of his fear. The voiceover emphasizes this psychological distance, laying the foundation for the immense effort required. This initial phase alone demanded an unparalleled level of commitment, turning the rescue into a quiet, intense obsession for the small team. Knowing that any swift, aggressive action would likely result in Atlas fleeing into an area we couldn't track, condemning him to starve, we chose the path of agonizing patience, a systematic campaign to reintroduce the concept of kindness. This was the most difficult phase for the human participants, demanding immense emotional restraint. Our strategy was to establish a pattern of constant, non-threatening presence associated with life-giving sustenance. We selected a hidden but accessible spot, and for 3 full days, we placed the most aromatic, high-value food we could secure, roasted chicken and canned, heavily scented wet dog food. We retreated immediately, vanishing from sight, but maintaining constant camera surveillance. The first 2 days were exercises in deep, spiritual frustration. The cameras showed Atlas observing the offerings from a distance, sometimes for hours. He would approach cautiously, his nose twitching, the scent of the food battling the learned terror of the past 100 days, but always the fear one. He would pivot and disappear into the gloom. The voiceover narrates the team's internal struggle during this time, the quiet arguments about adjusting the plan, the constant debate over whether to push harder or wait longer. It was a test of faith in the inherent goodness of the animal, a belief that beneath the veneer of wildness, the dog still existed. On the 3rd night, a crucial shift occurred. Heavy rain fell, making scavenging nearly impossible and amplifying his hunger. On the 4th morning, the footage showed a different approach. Atlas emerged earlier, moving with a desperate, shaky urgency. He lunged at the food, not sniffing or assessing, but simply consuming with a frantic intensity, his head snapping up at every sound. This was a crack in his psychological defense, a moment where the primal need for survival eclipsed the paralyzing terror of humans. He was still gone in seconds, but for the first time, he had willingly taken something from our world. That tiny act was the green light. The next phase was set in motion, the controlled introduction of the final safety measure. With the trust slightly established, the team introduced the specialized equipment, a large, humane enclosure. The construction was a painstaking effort, camouflaging the wire mesh and trigger mechanism with natural elements, leaves, dirt, and branches, making it appear like a natural den or alcove. The lure remained the same, the promise of food, but this time, the stakes were impossibly high. If he detected the mechanism, he would never trust us or the area again. We could not afford a single mistake. The wait that evening was the longest any of the team had ever experienced. Hours crawled by under a cold, harvest moon when Atlas finally appeared. His hesitation was profound. He recognized the change in the landscape, circling the enclosure multiple times, his nose down, reading the ground, reading the subtle shift in scent. The voiceover builds the tension relentlessly. Here, describing every breath, every twitch of the dog's ear, he performed a full psychological assessment of the structure, stepping away, then returning. The team, watching via remote monitors, held their breath, sending silent, desperate pleas into the night. It took over an hour of agonizing indecision. Finally, the crippling exhaustion and the pervasive hunger that had defined his last 100 days overcame the last vestiges of fear. He lowered his head and stepped fully inside to claim the meal. The click of the door mechanism was, paradoxically, the quietest yet most momentous sound of the entire operation. It was the sound of a cage closing, but it was also the sound of a window opening to a new life. The immediate reaction from Atlas was panic, a frantic, desperate attempt to escape his confinement, which was quickly calmed by the rescuer who approached immediately. The moment of contact was handled with extreme care, the rescuer, speaking in the lowest, softest tones, knelt by the enclosure, gently draping a heavy, warm blanket over the trembling dog. The physical fear was overwhelming, but the words were the true medicine. "It's all right. Atlas, you fought so hard. The 100 days are done. You're going home now. You are safe." The sheer relief in the rescuer's voice underscores the emotional investment. Securing him in the transport vehicle was done with minimum fuss. The dog now completely subdued by terror and exhaustion. The rescue was technically successful, but the real work, the work of healing the soul, was just beginning. The veterinary clinic was a crucible of recovery. The initial assessment confirmed the team's gravest fears. Dr. Chen, the lead veterinarian, appeared briefly on camera to provide a detailed, sober account of Atlas's condition. "He is, clinically, a walking miracle," she stated, listing the harsh realities: severe cachexia wasting syndrome, near-fatal kidney, and liver stress due to prolonged malnutrition and parasitic infestation. His body temperature was perilously low, and his blood work indicated a cascade of failing systems. The need for aggressive, round-the-clock intervention was immediate. The first 7 to 2 hours were a fight against the inevitable. Atlas was placed on intravenous fluids and carefully introduced 2 tiny, easily digestible portions of food. The most painful aspect was the necessary treatment of his physical injuries. The careful shaving of his matted coat, revealing deep pressure sores and numerous lacerations from traversing the wild terrain. We show the dedication of the vet techs. They're gentle, patient hands applying antiseptic and bandaging his wounds. But as the days passed and his physical status stabilized, the psychological trauma emerged as the true, critical illness. Atlas remained untouchable. He would eat only when the kennel was empty, facing the wall, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. His default state was cowering fear. Dr. Chen emphasized the gravity of this emotional detachment. Atlas's body is many, but his central issue is the fractured spirit. He doesn't just fear humans. He has been completely convinced by his ordeal that the world is a hostile place and safety is an illusion. This required a dedicated, non-medical intervention. A volunteer, Maria, was assigned to him. Her mission was simple but profound: be present, offer no expectations, and demonstrate unrelenting, quiet kindness. Maria spent 12 hours a day, every day, simply sitting outside his kennel with a book, humming softly, or just breathing steadily. She never pushed her hand into the cage. She never demanded a response. She was simply a steady, benevolent rock in his chaotic world. The narrative delves into Maria's thoughts, her own moments of doubt and despair. You feel helpless. You pour your heart out in silent hope, and you get nothing back. But you remember the 100 days, and you know you can't give up on the dog who refused to give up on himself. The breakthrough came at the end of the second week. It was slow, subtle, and profound. Atlas began to show small shifts in behavior. He stopped cowering when Maria entered the room. He started watching her, a flicker of curiosity replacing pure terror. Then, during a quiet afternoon when Maria was softly singing, Atlas did the unthinkable. He rose, stretched, and took a single, wobbly step toward the kennel door. He paused, his gaze fixed on her. Maria simply kept humming. The next day, Maria began introducing small, gentle verbal reassurances, using his name Atlas with a soft, repetitive rhythm. And then, the ultimate moment, as Maria placed a piece of boiled chicken just inside the kennel entrance. Atlas approached, ate, and then, instead of retreating, he lingered. He looked up, his eyes connecting with hers for a fleeting second. And then, the tiny, life-affirming gesture, the slow, shaky wag of his tail. It was the most beautiful sign of surrender, a declaration that the siege was over. From that day forward, Atlas began his spiritual renaissance. He started greeting Maria with a soft, whiny sound. He allowed her to stroke his head gently through the mesh. Once he was medically cleared to leave his isolation kennel, the true physical and psychological transformation began in the broader, warmer environment of the rescue center. The visual transformation was stunning. His coat regained its luster, his muscles rebuilt, and his face, once sharp and skeletal, softened with peace. The fear was replaced by a playful, goofy exuberance. He started engaging with toys, romping in the exercise yard, and showing a deep, almost needy affection for his human caregivers. The dog that spent 100 days battling the world was now a dog that spent his days demanding belly rubs. Atlas's story is a triumph of the will, a beacon of hope. He endured 100 days of darkness, but he has walked into a lifetime of light. He is a testament to the power of pure love, a reminder that every animal deserves a second chance. Atlas found his hope. Thousands more are still waiting. By joining the HopeRescueStories family, by liking and sharing this miracle, you fund the search for the next hidden soul. Help us keep the hope alive. Help us end the solitude. Thank you for being part of Atlas's incredible journey.